Hey Sagittarius, welcome to Catalyst Energies and welcome to your weekly astrology forecast. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. You're going to have to bear with me, Sag. It has been an incredibly long day of recording, and you are the very end of that very long day, and my voice is absolutely shot. So just bear with me as I do my best to hold it together as I give you this report, because it's very important what's happening right now, and I would really feel I would not feel right if I wasn't able to give this information to you guys, because the astrology for the week is pretty impactful. We got our first new moon of 2022, which is coming on the 2nd of January. It's a new moon in Capricorn. But honestly, it's the astrology of this weekend, of the 24th, 25th, into the 26th, that is astounding. It's so powerful. And it's only now that I've been able to really put all of this together for everyone in their own video per sign. So Sagittarius, we're going to break this down in terms of your Sag rising and then Sag moon and Sag sun into the areas of your chart and then your life that these major transits are likely to have an impact. So if you want to get into the specifics of the transits themselves and get into a much more in-depth forecast for the week in general, you can check out the Catalyst Weekly Astrology Report. I usually stream it live on Friday mornings, 10 a.m. roughly. We'll see how it goes. It's pretty late now on Thursday, so we'll see if I actually stay on task for that time frame on Friday. But I will be recording the general astrology, so you want to take a look at that just to get a much more in-depth view of these transits, because they're very large and there's a lot going on with them. But for now, we're just doing a check-in to see where these are going to impact what areas of life for the Sag person, especially Sag rising, that these transits are going to be impacting. So Sag, let's just get right into it because there's just so much to talk about. So the first thing I want to bring up is that on the 24th, first thing, very early in the morning, very late at night on Thursday, we've already pretty much passed this point, but what happened is as of recording at least, is the moon in the last degree of Leo, 30 degrees Leo, in opposition to 30 degrees Aquarius Sag. This is right on your axis of your vertical axis of your power, where you draw your power from, and certainly where you are releasing it from, Sag. So that's one transit, and you can see that it is surrounded by a grand square that is made up also of the nodal axis of the moon, creating the other opposition. So grand square, grand cross, but what it represents is a conflict that we can't get out of, right? A grand square is a very structurally sound shape and pattern that encloses us within it. And the only way to really make the best of a grand square is to realize that we can't get out of this conflict, whatever it is, and it has us contained, and that we have to find our infinite self within it. In order to actually resolve anything or to learn or grow from this grand square. So yes, it's very challenging. And when you have these in the natal chart, it really shows that the individual is going to have a confrontation in these areas that they can't get around, and is going to need to be addressed at some point. And in galactic astrology, for the star seeds, if you have grand square like this in your natal chart, especially if the corners are star seed markings at all, I mean, this square keeps you in your mission. It literally keeps you in your lane so that you don't lose sight of why you are here. And it might be challenging, and there might be a conflict that you can't get out of confronting, but at the same time, it absolutely keeps us on task. And it is in these squares in particular that we grow so much. It's the overcoming of the challenge and the conflict and the confrontation that we actually grow and evolve. So it's important that it's here, and and it's important that we speak to it as well. So the moon at the last degree of Leo, we've all been feeling a deep sensitivity in the last 2 days, I think, to this, to release this part of ourselves, this authentic nature that we all have that's represented by Leo, is really been wanting to not only combust and release, but it can't be held back anymore. And we may not necessarily express it. And for the Sagittarius person, it is in the ninth house, which is of understanding and belief and broad spectrum reality, right? Understanding and cultural horizons. This is the realm of higher education in the ninth house, and so the moon. Moving through the ninth house and coming into this opposition pretty much right at the top of the chart for Sag really seems to represent that there is a belief system or an aspect in the understanding of the Sag person, or the collective paradigm that the Sag person is operating within, that's giving meaning to the contributions in society. There's aspects of it that want to be unsealed and released, and in fact they can't be held back any longer. Now, like I said, this is a deep sensitivity. It may not be expressed. It depends on where you find this particular position of the moon in your chart. But again, for the Sag person, this has a lot to do with the meaning that motivates and catalyzes us to create something new and precious, right? And so I feel like it's a lot of the combustion of the fire of alchemy in general that cannot be contained anymore for the Sag person in the realm of where that alchemy is practiced, the transmutation that comes from understanding and the synthesis of ideas into a creation of something new. Now, the opposition to Jupiter, which is the chart ruler, Jupiter is ruling this chart, is very much at the very bottom of the chart in this opposition. And Jupiter, as the ruler of this chart, has been transiting the third house in Aquarius, and it hasn't been easy for anybody, because it's not an area that Jupiter necessarily is the most comfortable in. But what it is doing is that every time that we have found ourselves out of alignment with that which gives us a very deep meaning, the thunderbolts of Zeus have been thrown at our feet so that we get back into line, right? It wakes us up, and it charges us, and it also can shock us and scare us too. But certainly it's a resource, even though it may not be the most comfortable. It's certainly a resource, and a really strange way for Jupiter to advocate, but that's part of the Aquarian nature. It's about the singular point of reference. It's the laser beam that is represented by Aquarius. So as Jupiter is about to move into another position of rulership, which is Pisces, in the fourth house, and just a sigh of relief into the inner life and the family life, and to get into the feels of, especially for Sagittarius, because the Pisces is your fourth house, getting very much into the feels of the inner life and the home life, and the roots of where the Sagittarius person is really stabilized, right, in home and family, and where your loyalties lie, and where you're drawing your power from. I mean, it's going to the meaning and the expansion into this area once the chart ruler of Sag gets into the fourth house. The 28th, I believe, is when it's going to happen. So this week, it's going to be a sigh of relief, because it's been moving through the realm of ideas and knowledge, and it's a very singular point of reference in terms of searching for this deep inner truth and wisdom, right? Whenever we get off track or allow ourselves to fall out of alignment with the social order of things in an esoteric way, or being in an awake state in some ways, Jupiter has absolutely put us right back on course, and especially for the Sag person. This is where a lot of the deep meaning comes from. Now, the opposition with the moon at this point is kind of balancing and stabilizing what would be a very intense release of energy that maybe may reflect back to the Sag person the meaning and the potency of that which is being released in terms of a social context. But Jupiter is like, slow your roll here. We did so much work, coming into alignment with this very singular knowing in your thoughts and your mind. And we're about to take that into the realm of the feels and really just release it and expand so much into the deep inner life. As a result, don't lose it now. Don't lose it now, because, keep in mind, Sag, that everything is really at the bottom of the chart for the most part. So all of the energy right now is situated in the areas of life that have to do with you and the development of you as an individual, and not your relationship to everything else. But a moon up there at the top of the chart certainly could have you feeling into the needs of more than just yourself, and really the combustion that that needs to be released and doesn't want to be capped anymore. But Jupiter's like, just slow your roll. It's okay. Like, I'm going to draw this power back down into the inner life, and into all the conscious totality of being that has been developed very methodically and with a lot of attention and resources in the mind for Sagittarius. This has been very important work. Now, the Saturn is also in the same house, and so the mental sphere has also had a very strong and stable authoritarian bent to it, and has also it's provided stability, it's provided leadership, it's provided a sense of security in the third house, specifically that there is right now, there's a natural progression to our mental ideas and how they develop, and there is nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing wrong with where we are. And in fact, Saturn is just like, no, this is just the way it is. This is just the way it is. I am time, space, and gravity, and in order to fuck with me, you have to literally split the atom. And so it's providing a lot of mental stability to the Sagittarius person as the meeting of the realm of ideas has gone through quite a training process. Now, what can serve to disrupt that stability? Well, it's Uranus, right? Uranus is going to also square Saturn also on the 24th, which is right now, essentially, as I'm recording this, is coming into this square exact. And so it also is going to reverberate out for the next couple days as well. And if anything can put some sort of fracture in the skeletal system, right, to literally break a bone or to do something that's going to impact the structural integrity that Saturn represents in a physical, material way, it'll be Uranus. And in a square, it definitely could break a bone, right? And I'm not saying literally, I'm saying figuratively. And that bone could be the structure, the skeletal structure of your mindset and the function of your mind that there's been a lot of work done in this area, Sag. And for Uranus, that has shown a consistently shifting landscape in the daily activities, in the habits, routines, your self-care, Sag, and certainly in the process that has to do with personal reconstitution that's triggered by challenge, right? There's no stability here with Uranus. We all been kind of like, shopping around for realities here. And for the Sag person, it has to do with never really settling on a routine. And that's not necessarily a terrible thing. In terms of, Uranus is shaking it up. The landscape is always shifting. And so it kind of is training you in some ways, Sag, to be okay with the variability and the disruption in this realm. And that in itself is a training program, right? Is the fact that there is no stability here, that the landscape is always shifting. And that's the mutability of the sixth house in general. And so to have Uranus here, there's an awakening process that is triggered by this variability or this innovation or needing to be free and to think outside of the box about these things. But the square, it could very well disrupt and impact the structural integrity of your own mind, to not have a steady and a very steady and disciplined daily practice of just a daily practice, a material daily practice that has to do with, hold on one second, that has to do with awakening, because it is Uranus. And so if there's too much flexibility here, if it's too loose, or it's too shifting, and it's not allowing for it's not allowing for you to awaken through this, but to just be in chaos, then yes, this is going to potentially break the bones of the scaffolding or the skeleton of your own mental sphere and your immediate environment. But if it's too strict over in your mind and is not allowing any flexibility the other way, Uranus will again find a way, and sometimes that's even more disruptive and destructive because we're holding on too tight with Saturn to our security. And Uranus is like, well, I'm still going to shift the landscape. So if you are so embedded into this particular format of security, well, it's really going to be tested now. So keep this in mind, Sag, because it's important that you are, you haven't really made any real decisions or has settled necessarily on any particular daily practice or routines or your work habits or anything like that. You're shopping around, you're scrolling through, you're like, especially internally, this is going to be different when Uranus stations direct in mid-January. This is going to be a lot more shifting of a landscape in your everyday reality. So that's something to consider. Right now, this is still internalized, and this square will show where there are gaps, and it'll show where the integrity in your mind and in your immediate environment is weak. And so of all the people, this has felt the most like, with Sag, this is felt, this transit, this square in particular is feeling to me that is an opportunity to, it's like when you have, this is a weird example, but it's just what popped into my mind. It's like when you have like some sort of inflatable thing, right? Like a raft or whatever, and you want to, or a floaty, and you want to find where the leak is coming from because you know it's leaking air, but you don't know. So you blow it up and then you put it in the water, and then you squeeze the air out and you find where the bubbles are. This is what this feels like to me for Sag. Like, this is a testing opportunity with this square to see where the holes are in your mind and in your thinking, and in the skeletal system of your whole cognitive and neurological system. It's really important that Sag is addressing this with this square. I don't think the square itself is going to be right now as impactful on Sag as it may be on other signs, but that's because when it does station direct in mid-January in the 6th house, it's going to be a different story entirely, and the landscape is going to be so much more variable, and this could lead to a lot more chaos in terms of your daily life, Sag. So you want to make sure that your mental stability is on point here. Now, the 25th is where we have Venus and Pluto in Capricorn. They're going to come into a conjunction on the 25th, and this is in the 2nd house. You have Mercury in the 2nd house, the Sun now in the 2nd house. This is of the house of the actual objective reality, the resources that Sag owns and utilizes, and is what the Sag person was born into, his 2nd house. And so the first conjunction of Venus and Pluto was pretty impactful, I think. And so now that Venus is retrograde and is going to come back to the same point after this experience to begin with, there's been a deep inventory here. There's been an assessment, a deep assessment of the value and the worth of that we are all kind of giving to our the social order as a whole and what we're contributing to society. And now that Venus is retrograde, I feel like that there is much more of a consensual and intentional offering of some more density along those same lines that didn't quite get knocked loose in the first conjunction. And so there seems to be an offering that is happening. And for Sag, it's in your physical reality here. What needs to be let go of in your actual assets, and this can anything from your physical money and to your property to your genetic lineage and what that represents. It could be your tradition that you and ancestry where you're from. It could be the land that you were literally born into, but something here is ready to be released. Certainly is ready to be offered, and Venus is offering that part of the worth and value that is ready to be recycled essentially and composted. So maybe not nearly as impactful as the first conjunction, but still on Christmas Day is very impactful, but also very internally more directed. So maybe it'll be much more of a process that is private for many people, and for Sag, again, it'll be in the realm of your actual resources. Now, the same day, Mars in your first house, in conjunction with Antares, will be in a trine to Chiron in your fifth house. And this is, Mars is going to spit some truth through fire about you as a person, Sag, as your persona, as your subjective experience of reality. There is going to be a spitting of very, and it's forceful and assertive and certainly action-oriented and very painful, right? It's going to sting, and it's going to be acted upon and spit forward through the very nature of who you are. As a person and the person you present to the world. And as a result of that, the trine to Chiron, this is an incredible opportunity for healing these original wounds and these victim narratives and basically any of these identities that have been imposed upon us that lead us to feel guilty and ashamed of who we are. And for the Sag person, this is going to be like such a release in your creative and authentic expression of who you are. The Sag person is, Jupiter is ruling this chart. You are in some ways the Sag person represents the search for the deep inner meaning, and the Sag person represents the the archer, the aiming towards the sky and the big picture, optimism and honesty, and really acting again in accordance with the value system that gives it all meaning. And so something from the very nature of who you are, Sag, comes spitting out through Mars, and is either going to reinforce and trigger you into much more of a martyr, or certainly into a lot of shame and guilt. Really, it's just about being yourself and expressing yourself. Or it's going to be so healing. Speaking of the self, because it's coming directly from you as a person, is also going to allow for some sort of release of these identities or these wounds or these inner child wounds or whatever is attached here that is not allowing you to fully express your authentic self. It's either going to find some healing or it's going to be reinforced. Either way, it's going to sting like crazy because we got Antares, and it's going to sting like fire. You know what I mean? It's going to sting like fire, and Mars is just going to go for it. And Mars rules Aries. So, Mars is ruling that house too. So it's even more invested in spitting truth out towards the area of that it rules, which is your authentic expression. It's just like Sagittarius already knows what's going on. Most of the time, Sagittarius people just really do know, for the most part, more than other people because they understand. And the very nature of who they are is somebody who holds that understanding. And that's just going to, like I said, it's going to spit truth, and it's going to sting. It's going to be a hot sting. But what it's going to do is eradicate everything that is keeping you from being in alignment with your true, authentic nature. So beyond that, then the moon comes into Libra on the 26th over in the 11th house. The sun is in the second house now, and there will be a lot of attention paid in this third quarter square on finishing what's been started, and specifically in terms of your actual resources. There is a process that has been already instituted that in this moment, with this square, there will be a lot of attention paid on the necessity to finish what's been started, to make sure that everything is accounted for before you move into the next cycle before you cross the threshold. And this will be, again, in the very nature of the Sag material reality, in your resources, whatever you identify as yours to own and to utilize. There is some cycle there that needs to be attended to and needs to be addressed at that level before moving forward. Now, the thing that's going to cause a bit of a crisis in our consciousness with this third quarter moon is that the moon in Libra in the 11th house is a stirring and a deep sensitivity here to the idea that in order to really materialize what we want, we have to clearly visualize it. And this goes into the social realm in general, your friend groups, the society that you're in, the town that you live in, perhaps. With the 11th house, it is the larger social organism as a whole. And so in order to really manifest or materialize what you want in that realm, Sag, you will start to feel the need to be visualizing it. At the very least, start to create the energetic template in your own seat of creation, which is your sacral area. And the moon is just this sensitivity to it, and an intuitive knowing of the need to start visualizing what you want to materialize later. It's in the square to the sun that is still holding a lot of attention in a moment that is about attending to everything that you've started first. And this, again, has to do with your actual resources. When we pass beyond this point and start moving through the week, the big things is Jupiter moves in the 4th house. Mercury will have moved into Aquarius, into your 3rd house, and then is really going to put your mind at work in terms of the mental realm. Maybe it needs to make some repairs after that square with Uranus. It's very possible, right? Patch up some holes with your mental power, and you're, hermetically sealing some things that perhaps have always been a little bit damaged, and you don't want to let anything else back into your neural networks that shouldn't be there. But it's going to be the new moon in your 2nd house at 13 to 14 or 12 to 13 degrees Capricorn, which is really setting an intention to just let it burn. Let it burn, which is the very essence of what you own, right? Your resources. And that can be all kinds of resources. It's whatever it represents what you were born into. So you may be bringing some sort of ancestral genetic entity attachment in with you, right? And even though you acknowledge that you're going to finish what you've started, or that you make sure that every aspect is attended to before you cross into unknown territory, which is really important. It's also, then you get to set the intention here with this new moon in January, the first new moon, the beginning of 2022, to just let it burn. Just let it burn away, and know that the burning and the destruction that is as the result of the burning is how we find our rebirth and emerge as the phoenix. So in the 2nd house, this is, again, your resources, all kinds of resources, but what you were born into and what is yours to utilize. There's a profoundly purifying event that we can initiate with this new moon by acknowledging and honoring and revering and focusing on the symbol of fire as that force of purification and ultimately transcending the death and rebirth cycle to emerge anew in the ashes of the fire. And it's going to have it's going to have a very, very profound impact on you. You're already going through this this solar eclipse that started in your first house. And so this is just adding to this incredibly transformative and purifying cycle of the very nature of who you are. And also that has a lot to do with letting the world around you burn away as well, or letting the genetic history that you came into, to let that burn away and be purified so that you can rise anew. We don't have to be trapped in the essence of a material reality, and our mind is truly what frees us from this unconscious living that mostly animals are engaged with. And I'm not saying all animals and that they don't have more sophisticated social groups and stuff like that. That's not what I'm saying. The point is that something is burning away so significantly for the Sagittarian person, and specifically the new moon can be a reverence for the fire that is going to purify the very nature of the material world that you're part of. And that may be your resources, like money or your land or your body or your genetics or your ancestry. Those are all second house things. So Sagittarius, that is plenty of information to work with at this time. So thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. If you are interested in supporting this work, there's a lot of ways that you can do that. Of course, you can subscribe if you're not already subscribed. You can share this content. You can like this video, regardless of where you're finding it, what platform. It all helps. You can go to Subscribestar, that's in the link below, or you can hang out to the end of the video and get some more information. But subscribing, being a subscriber through Subscribestar is going to be the primary way for me to continue to offer these reports and these transmissions as much as I have, because it's a lot of work, and subscribing me monetarily is going to, allow for that to keep happening. So I do appreciate that. And anything else that you need is in the description box below. You can book a personal reading, get more information from my website. And I love you guys. Have a great weekend, Sag. Enjoy being together with people. Enjoy whatever you do over the weekend. You celebrate, you don't celebrate, it doesn't matter. As long as you are feeling peace and joy and togetherness and a sense of contentment on some level, I think that that's a win for everybody. So take care of yourself, Sag, and we will check in on the next report, okay? Talk to you later. Have a great weekend. Bye.